Make sure, because you're going to have to solve by factoring. It's this first section is solving by factoring all different types of methods. So you might have to refer to your purple graphic organizer. It says always first check a GCF, then check to see if you have either two terms, that would mean a difference of squares, three terms, a trinomial, that's your X puzzle, or slip and slide, and then four terms by grouping. And then I am going to talk about the calculator. So Michael, you have a question? Did you have a question? Okay. All right, so make sure it's equal. First, make sure it's in standard form. Highest exponent to smallest exponent, or smallest term. This is already equal to 0. What, I guess, method did we use on number 1 to start off? To factor. The X puzzle. Yeah, that's what we should be using. We should have a negative 30 on the top, 7 at the bottom. So what are the factors we have here? 10 and a negative 3. Okay, so we have X plus 10, X minus 3. Okay, now since we're solving it, remember, I'm just going to kind of refer to step 4. Make sure you set each factor equal to 0. Some of you already know the shortcut of that, but we're making sure if I give you the factors, the parentheses, you make it equal to 0 and you solve for X. Now, I know you can do this mentally. I don't need the work from this. So if you want to jump from giving the factor form, so which is these parentheses, and go straight to showing X equals a negative 10 and X equals, equals positive 3. That's fine. But this is what we're trying to get as an answer choice, the actual value for X. Okay. So on number 2, I state that because I want you to work smarter, not harder. Hopefully you see that these two parentheses here are already the factors. So we should go straight. Go step 4. Go to step 4. Step 4 says set each factor equal to 0. So now all I'm doing is setting the factor, which is the 3x minus 2 equal to 0, and the 2x plus 9 equal to 0. Now you're solving for X. So to solve for X here, on the first set, you needed to add 2 on both sides. You get 3x equals 2. So your X is 2/3. Are we okay on that? So here, X is going to equal what for this other value? Yep, negative 9/2. All right, so on number 3, we do starting with the highest exponent, but is it equal to 0? So what should our first step be? Minus the 21, yes, on both sides. So now this right side here is now equal to 0. We're going to just rewrite it in standard form, which would be 3x squared minus 2x minus 21 equals 0. All right, what's our method now here? Do we slip and slide or slide the coefficient? Yeah, to the back here. So what's going to go in our X? Negative 6 stays on top, negative 2 is on bottom. Okay, and I heard the factors. You had negative what? Negative 9 and 7. Okay, so we create our factor form of X minus 9 in the parentheses and X plus 7 in the parentheses. That's 7, sorry. All right, but what's our next step here? Is these our factors, or do we have something else we have to do? Yeah, I got to divide by the coefficient. So divide by 3. Divide by 3. So yes, this can be simplified to x minus 3. And this, if I put it in factor form, is 3x plus 7. But because I really just want the solution, all right, I just really need to focus on the simplified term. So x here, sorry, x equals positive 3 here, and x equals negative 7/3 here as our values. Yes or no? Are we okay? All right. So let's talk about 4 real quick, because I don't think we had one where you had to subtract or set it equal to 0 for 2 terms. So on 4, I'm just kind of circling this because you still have to put it from highest to low, but you have to make it equal to 0. So there's 2 items, 2 terms that I need to eliminate on the right side of the equal sign. This x and this minus 34. So I'm going to put minus x, and then I'm going to line this minus x with the 8x because those are like terms. That cancels the x here, and then this one I'm putting plus 34. So that would cancel, and then plus 34 with the 30. So now I have 2x squared plus 7x plus 4 equals 0. And now we can pick a method to factor. Okay, so from here, what should we end up doing? Yeah, we should slip and slide. We got a coefficient here. So yeah, there's 4 times 2. So that gives me an 8 in my puzzle, x puzzle, and 7. Okay. Do we have factors of 8 with the sum of 7? Yes.
8 and negative 1.
But we need a positive 8.
You have said 8 and negative 1.
8 and negative 1 gives me 7, but 8 times a negative 1 does not give me positive 8. Okay. All right. So this is where you're going to have to let your calculator. When we did the factor or the graphic organizer, and we did looking at our ways to factoring, it does not work for every method, for every type. Okay. So here's how you can use your calculator to check. Let me get this set up again. I just realized I got disconnected. All right. Do you know how we can look at a graph of a quadratic and see if it has a root or a 0? Like what you did last night, you had a bunch of parabolas. Okay, so if you go and now do y equals here. So I want to change this so this is y equals the 2x squared plus 7x plus 4. Okay, let's put this in the calculator and see if it's true that we cannot come up with some factors. So go to your calculator and hit that y button, and let's type in the trinomial. I got to open up mine. Okay. Y equals, let me clear these out. We have 2x squared plus 7x plus 4. And we're going to graph it. Okay, my graphics, I'm going to fix my window because I don't think this is a standard window. So I'm just going to go to change my window. I always hit zoom and either go to 6, which is standard. There we go. Or we're going to go to zoom fit to fit the graph onto the window. Now, would this quadratic that we just typed in have a solution? Yes. How many solutions does it have? 2, right? Because we see 2 points of intersection here. Okay. All right. So to get that, let me just show you how the calculator decides to calculate it. Okay. There's 2 ways, right? I can look for the actual, create an intersection, 2 lines, or I can just find the graph solution. So if you hit second, the blue button, and the trace button, we have the calculate options on the calculator. So you have to hit second and trace. Okay. So remember, we are trying to find the intersection, or we're trying to find the solution. So we're trying to find a zero. Remember, another word for solution is zero. So if I hit 2, okay, you're going to get a blinking cursor. But you have to read what the calculator says. The calculator on mine at the bottom says left bound. So it's saying that put your blinking cursor on the left side of the curve. Okay, does that make sense? Meaning, put it on the left of where you think the solution is, where that curve is crossing the x-axis. So I need to move my cursor. So I'm going to use my arrows, my left arrow, so I can just trace down and get my cursor to the left right here of where I think that intersection is. So move your cursor, the blinking cursor, to the left, and then you're going to hit enter. Okay, it's going to make like a little boundary line. Then you're going to see the words right bound. So it's going to say, okay, move the cursor to the right of where you think the intersection is. So I'm just going to go kind of below. So I'm one above the x-axis, one below the x-axis. Are y'all with me so far? So now I'm just going to hit enter. And then it's going to say, the calculator is saying, is this the area you want me to guess where the solution is? You should see the words guess. So then you have enter one more time, because I'm going to say, yes, this is where I want you to focus. Hit enter, and then there is my point. Okay, see how we have a decimal as our point of intersection. Okay, now I can physically see on this graph that there are 2. So because I see there's 2, I have to repeat those steps. All right, so I have to now say, I'm going to make the calculator calculate it again. So I'm going to hit second trace again. I'm going to look for a 0. So I hit number 2. And now, because I think the other one is over here to the right of my blinking cursor, I need to move my cursor so it's below it. So it's left of it. So I'm just going to now hit the right arrow and get right here near the intersection. And hit enter. And then I'm going to go above and hit intersection. And they hit enter one more time. And there is my second point. So some quadratics, and I don't think I gave you any that are crazy decimals like this, but there might be like a 2.5, okay, or 2.6. So some of your quadratics are still going to have roots. They're still going to have solutions, but they're going to be decimals. And so you have, and when that happens, you have to use your calculator to calculate it, or the quadratic formula, which we'll get into that after. So are we okay on this? Yes.
Have you pressed before hitting the enter this time?
You hit the blue button second and then trace to get to the screen that says calculate. Okay. So if you want to just make a little note to yourself that on a problem like this, you'll have to use the calculator. Use calculator. And then you can, to find intersection. Or 0. Okay, so you're looking for an intersection or a 0. Because the intersection would be your x-intercept. All right, so number 5 is like number 2, and number 6 is like number 3, because you have to make it equal to 0. So I'm kind of not going to do those. I want you to kind of try to do those yourself. I want to do another calculator one, and we're going to do that with number 7. Okay, so I can, right here, because it's already y equals, oh, sorry about that. I can go straight to y1, okay? Or if I want to solve by factoring, I just got to remember, instead of putting a y here, just make this equal to 0. and then I can do my steps. Okay, but if I'm doing factoring, there is a GCF here, and you have to do that first. All right. If you're using your calculator, so I'll go to my calculator. I have to go to y equals, I have to put in the trinomial, which was 6x squared minus 3x minus 63. And then we hit graph. And even though I don't see the vertex, I don't see where it curves, I can see that it crosses the x-axis at 2 spots. Okay. If I want to make it to fit so I can see the whole shape, I hit zoom and I have to scroll down and pick, after 9 you have this option for 0, which is zoom fit, and it'll fit the graph, the curve, the parabola onto the window. Okay, so either one will work. All right, so we know one of the solutions has to be what, because we can see an exact point here. Do y'all see this one here? So one of the solutions is a -3. So if I want to check the second one, I can just hit second trace for graph, hit 2 as a 0. I'm gonna move my cursor. So left of the solution means on the right side, I need to be a little below the x-axis. Hit enter, and then put the next one a little above. Right there. Hit enter again. There it is, 3.5. Okay. So once you start knowing these different functions, these different options with your graphing calculator, you can just put GC, so graphing calculator to solve. All right. So here, if we're factoring, this would have been x, I believe. Because was it 21? Yeah. Sorry. X. Yeah. That should be 2x squared. We had -3 and 3.5 as our answers. This needed to be slip and slide. So then you can do the x plus. So it comes out to be the same one. Then on 9 here, whether it's f of x or y equals, they mean the same thing. Okay, so even though I have f of x here, sorry, this is the same thing as y equals 12x squared plus 6x minus 0. Minus 6. Now, if I'm solving by factoring, it has to equal to 0. So I would just change this y to a 0 and then factor. Okay. There is a GCF here. They all have 6 in common. So we would have 6 on the outside of the parentheses. 2x squared plus x minus 1. And then you can go from there, or you can go to your calculator. Okay. 9, I'm hoping you recognize, because I see 2 terms and I see a minus sign, this is difference of squares. So what I was noticing on the practice star questions that was with your homework from Friday, that most students saw the difference of squares and you were able to take the square root of each number, each term, and some people forgot to write 2. So like this should be 7x squared, 7x, minus 4 and 7x plus 4. But you also have to remember this is equal to 0 to solve it. So each term, 7x minus 4 is equal to 0, and 7x plus 4 is equal to 0. So Get your factors, but make sure once you get your factors, your parentheses, make it equal to 0. So x here is going to equal a positive or a negative 4/7 when it's all said and done. Okay. All right. So after you're factoring, okay, the second part or the second types of questions, and there's going to be a bunch of different questions I can derive from this. Yes.
So it's supposed to be the 85 or 30.
From which one?
For 7. Would be 35 or
It's 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah. It's a decimal. Okay. So then section 2, your key features to your parabola. So all of these different terms you need to know and be able to identify on a graph. Okay. So like think of this as your word bank. We're going to use this to basically fill in 10 through 17. All right. So 10 says, what is the standard form of a quadratic equation? Which one would be our standard form? Yeah, ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so we already used that one. The shape of a quadratic equation is called. Who remembers what the shape of the quadratic equation is called? Yeah, parabola. All right, so we use that one. All right, number 12 here on the graph. This box is pointing to that red line. It might not be red on your, sorry. This dotted line. What do we call that dotted line? Yeah, the axis of symmetry. If you want to abbreviate and put AOS, that's fine. Okay. But it's your axis of symmetry. I'll probably write this one out and then put the abbreviation on the graph. Axis of symmetry. All right. Number 13 is pointing to that lowest point on the parabola. It's pointing to, yeah, that is the vertex. So this vertex is a minimum. Okay. All right, when the vertex is the highest point of the graph, we call it what? Maximum. Yeah, the maximum. All right, if you want to abbreviate, just max. So our lowest is called the minimum. What are our solutions? Our solutions are the blank. Look at your x-intercepts. Solutions to a quadratic equations are called, there's two possible, zeros, yep, or roots, yes. Yep. Okay. Now, what you got to be familiar with it, basically on your question, like in the question on the test, they're going to use these vocabulary words. So you have to know what they're referring to on the graph or in the problem. Okay. All right. So then we're just going to ask you to analyze the graphs, kind of like what you did last night. The graph will be given to you, and then you're going to answer questions off of it. So the first thing they want you to do here is just determine if there's 2 real roots, okay, 1 real root or no real roots. Then list the zeros if there is, okay? So on this first one, what's our number of roots? The roots is where we have an x-intercept. Yeah, 18 is 1. It only, right here, it only touched the x-axis. I don't know if y'all can see that, but the x-axis is right here. Okay. And so, and your y-axis is over here, the function. And so it only touches the parabola, the curve only touches the x-axis once. So that means it has 1, 0. What is that 0? That's what they're asking. What is the value of that 0? It is 3, 0. Yeah. Or you can just say x equals 3. The value of the x is your 0. Are we okay here? All right, now here's my x-axis on number 19 right here, and here is my y-axis. So what's our number of zeros here? Yeah, I mean number of roots, sorry. There are 0 roots here. And you had a problem like that last night where it did not touch the x-axis. So you have no roots. So then we have no solution for our zeros. Or you can say, I had some people say, can I write none? Yeah, you can say that. That's fine. Okay. All right, so you got 20. You might have to make your actual point of intersection so you can see it. Hopefully we see there are 2 roots. And our zeros are when x equals -2 and 0. Are we okay there? All right, so the last part, the last section, some more characteristics. Okay, this is just asking now, making sure you understand domain and range. Okay, so on 21 here, you're gonna have to draw or hopefully physically see the axis symmetry goes through the center of the parabola, it cuts it in half. So you have to give that equation. On our first one here, our axis of symmetry would be x, equals 3. Are we okay there? It's always a vertical line. So it has to be x equals that number. All right, so what is our actual vertex? The point where that axis of symmetry, it is, yes, 3, -2. All right, would this have a max or a minimum? It would have a minimum. It's the lowest point. Now, our domain, all real numbers. It's always just all real numbers for parabolas. Or if you wanted to use set notation, or interval notation, excuse me, negative infinity or positive infinity. Now, how do I determine the range? Because they want the range of this. Look at the lowest point, yes. Okay, so look at our minimum here. The minimum, the lowest point is where? Yeah, -2. Look at that y value. So this would be y is greater than or equal to -2. Okay. And then roots. What are the roots to this parabola or quadratic? Yeah, you could do, let me do it that way. So you can do it as order pair. We can do 2, 0, and 4, 0. Or if you want to write just the x values of the roots, you could put 2, 4. You just say x equals and you list the values. Okay. Now, on 23, no parabola is given. So this is when you have to use the graphing calculator. So you're going to have to type in this equation and sketch what you see. Okay. So the calculator can calculate some parts for you as well. So let's go to the calculator. Let's type it in. We're going to go to my y equals. I'm going to clear it out. Start off with our set of open parentheses. We have x -5. Close that parentheses. Then we're going to square it. And I'm going to arrow to the right and then say +3. And I'm going to hit the graph button once I get that in. Now, I went to zoom fit on my graph. Once it shows, hopefully. There's 2 things we could do. So like on the picture that they give you, they're telling you to look only in the section that's from 0 to 10 and 0 to 10. So we're only looking in this first quadrant. So if you want to change your window to that, you can. To do that, let me just show you. I would have to hit window, and my minimum x value would have to be 0. My maximum x value would be 10. You would keep your scale as 1. My minimum y value would be 0. My maximum y value would be 10. So if you want to make it fit the coordinate or the window that is on the piece of paper, you have to basically use the same numbers that you see. Okay, so you go to window, we go 0 to 10. I got the zeros from looking at the axes right here. Sorry, not this one. Oops, right here. So I was 0 to 10 on, this is my X right here. This is my Y. So I just typed in those numbers, okay? So when we graph, I can see where the axis of symmetry is going to go now, right? What do you think the value of the axis of symmetry is going to be? Yeah, it's going to go right here. There's your 5. There's the lowest point. It's going to go right. That's going to cut it through the middle right there. So we have X equals 5. Now, if you want to sketch it, you need some points to do that. So here's what you do. Go second graph to see some points. Okay. Now I want you to see something here. Look, we know the middle, right? The axis of symmetry cuts it in half through the middle, right? So once I find, because Michael said 5, so I saw that right there. So this tells me the points. This is the middle right here. And notice that if I go up, 4 is to 4, and if I go below 5, 6 is to 4. See how the numbers are reflexive? They're the same over that axis of symmetry. They're symmetrical. They're going to be the same value. So like if I go up, 7 is here, and then I look down below it, 7 again. 12, and then 12. So if I need some points, I can pull the points off the table to graph it. Okay. So now that we have these points, we can use these points to actually plot our point, or plot our parabola. So we knew, let's go back to here. Let me go to my picture. So our 5 was at, was it 3? Yeah. So 5, 3. Then it went 6, 4 over here. It went 4, 4. Then we had to 7. Let me take this off right here. Point. 7. And then it was reflexive. And so I knew my axis of symmetry is going through here. And I'm just sketching the parabola there. So this dotted line that I put here, that's representing my axis of symmetry. So X equals 5. I can physically see the first vertex. That was at 5, 3. It has a minimum. The domain is always all real numbers. Our range here, because it's a minimum and it's opening up, up is greater than or equal to. So it's going to be y is greater than or equal to 3. And what are we going to say for the roots here? Because does our parabola touch the x-axis? No. So we have no roots. So there's no solution. No intersections, there's no solution. All right, so then what I did here is gave you some star-like questions over our content, one factoring, one graph that you can read and interpret. And here's where you're going to do, or where you're going to really focus to prepare. At the bottom here, it says complete the online quizzes review. This will be extra credit, and also to see how the test will be like. The test-like questions are on the quizzes. Okay, the review is just a skill. We're practicing the skills, the content, the vocabulary, the key features. But if you want to see what the questions are going to look like, some multiple choice, some open-ended, then I suggest do the Quizzy review. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Cameron.
Will this be on Teams?
No, I just put it straight on quizzes, but I can put a reminder on Teams. Because you just have to sign in with Microsoft on quizzes. Do you remember the site we used before?
Yeah.
Okay, yes. Huh? No, I have to go get some. All right, so if you want to, I don't know how much time we have, but